Welcome to In the Know with CaT Bobin and Dr. I have my amazing co-host, Hey Dr. Tay, and we have some amazing ladies with us tonight. We're going to be talking about the If Then Ambassadors program. So I am going to sit back and let Dr. Tay kind of explain what that is and also introduce our guests.
Absolutely. So we've been talking to you all about a few fun topics that we've been covering lately. And I don't know why CaT trusts me so much to bring on new people that I love so much in life, and also to talk about initiatives that I want everyone to know. But one of the ideas was for us to talk about the If Then Ambassadorship, which I know we kind of dived in a little bit from CaT's first interview with me. But I wanted to expand it and bring it to a different level and have her talk to all of us, a few more of us, who actually went to Comic-Con 2023 in July. So I have on here, and I'm going to go to each person and give you a second to just introduce yourself and what you do. And then hopefully I can get around to everyone before we dive into the big questions. So starting with Sam Wins.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me here. So I'm Sam Wins, obviously, and I'm a conservation biologist and science educator with the National Park Service here in beautiful San Diego, California at the Brio National Monument.
Thank you. We have Wendy Bohan.
Hi, I am Dr. Wendy Bohan, and I'm an earthquake geologist and a science communications specialist. So I try and learn about earthquakes, why they happen, where they happen, when they happen, and then I teach people about them and how to stay safe when they happen.
I love it. Becca.
Hello, my name is Dr. Becca Peixoto. I am an archaeologist. I'm really interested in where we've come from as humans and where we might be going and what kind of stories we can learn about the past through excavation and artifacts that we might find that will help us be better informed moving forward.
So exciting. We have Kay.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Kay Savage, and I'm a data scientist, which combines the fields of computer science, math and statistics, and a domain, what we want to apply it to, like music data, sports data, any sort of data.
Love it. Corey.
Hello, great to be here. I'm a tech inventor and an author because I just wrote a book about 20 years of inventions that were robots for kids with disabilities, virtual reality systems for the space station, and all sorts of other cool stuff.
Love it. Sydney.
Hey y'all, Sydney Hamilton. I'm an aerospace engineer. I am working on an experimental plane called X-66, the Sustainable Flight Demonstrator, and it is the first experimental plane focused on sustainability. And I am also super passionate about STEM outreach, just like all the other ladies here. So thanks for having us today.
And Bea.
Yeah, so I'm Bea, and I work at Microsoft as a program manager on the usage billing. And then I'm the founder of Nuevo Foundation, which is a nonprofit where we teach kids how to code.
I love it. I get excited when I talk to you all, like every time.
Yes.
So we wanted to make sure we, of course, cover the If Then initiative because we are all If Then ambassadors. So I know, CaT, you have the website handy. So can any of you kind of contribute? I guess let's go with Becca first and talk about the If Then initiative. I know it's random. Sorry, Becca. On the spot. The If Then initiative, what do you feel like you've contributed to it? The initiative itself, can you speak a little bit about, the importance of the If Then ambassadorship?
Yeah, the If Then Ambassadorship brought together more than 120 women from all across the country working in different areas of science. And through the ambassadorship, I myself have learned a lot of great skills for improving the science outreach that I do. I've come to see how really, truly important representation of women in science is. And I've gotten to meet all of these amazing scientists who do really cool stuff, some of which I didn't even know existed in the world. So I'm learning a lot from this program, and hopefully through it, I'm able to help younger people see themselves as scientists.
Absolutely. And Wendy, like, do you feel like you've inspired girls everywhere through this ambassadorship and your role in it? Or like, what have you felt from being a part of the ambassadorship?
I mean, I came into this wanting to be kind of a high profile role model for young girls and show them that anybody can be a scientist, that you can look a certain way and you can be from any kind of background. You know, you can have all sorts of different kinds of interests, and all of those people can be scientists. And I wasn't expecting that I would be so inspired. You know, we all have times in our careers and in our lives when we're like, wow, am I doing the right thing? Do I belong here? You know, am I an imposter in this space? And being around these women inspires me to realize that I do belong and I am a good scientist, and that, you know, it's great to have a team where we all work together so that everybody can do really well and become the best version of themselves.
I love that. Love that. And I know there has been a lot of inspiration. I'm really trying to speak from the outside perspective. But I know there's been a lot of motivation and inspiration from all of you all. And it's, especially at some of these events. Can we talk about some of the events leading to Comic-Con that the ambassadorship has been a part of? Anybody can jump in first. Or Bea.
like any events. Oh yeah, so first of all, super thankful to the IFDN, to Sam for putting together, for inviting us 2 years in a row, has been amazing. So we knew what to expect, right? So we knew it's gonna be lots of kids, a lot of little tiny kids, which is the cutest. So we had an experiment where you have oranges, and then if you touch it, then it grounds and it makes some sound and light up on the Adafruit. So last year we had some orange juice because the kids just squeezing it super tight. We tried other kids trying to eat it, so we were prepared in the sense like, okay, let's give it a try. I'm in Seattle and it's actually sunny. Can you believe it? We practice that and we do those events. But every time, I think that the prettiest thing about doing that already once and coming back is, let's make sure that we have for all ages, and it has to be quick because the kids are so stimulated in the sense like every table has cool stuff. Right, so you as even you as an adult, you want to stop when you see a lot of colors, if that's what you think, or if a lot of tech or whatever you're into. So you go in a room. So I'm like, okay, let's have activities for the little ones, for the middle one, and for a little bit more advanced. Right. So that's something that we prioritize for this event.
So I'm gonna rewind just a little bit. So
yeah, I was gonna rewind it as well.
Thank you. Before we even get there, no, that was great. That was great. Before we even get there, though, I kind of want to talk about some of the other events. So I know, like, just to touch on some things, and I want you all to kind of back it by saying whatever experiences you've had. You know, a lot of people have already heard about the statue exhibit, which I think is the most amazing thing, most powerful thing that could ever exist, of 120 plus women in STEM. And, you know, with their bios, and literally you could walk through this exhibit wherever it's at, because it's been in several locations, and speak to the person that is actually in statue form and talk about their STEM journey and everything that's inspired them to get past challenges and get where they're at. Right. On top of that, we've done a lot of interactive hands-on activities with kids, because the big mission is to try to motivate middle school girls into STEM careers. But to touch on where Bea is bringing us, which is Comic-Con, it's Comic-Con 2023, which I really want to talk about the foundation to the idea first, right? So if we can get Sam to come in and bring us in with, how did you even think of this amazing idea to bring women in STEM to Comic-Con? Because a lot of people, when we think about Comic-Con, we do not think STEM at all. Right. And a lot of people say you have to bring people to the level of whomever, right? And you essentially said, I'm going to bring the comic, the love and the passion for comic, and the action heroes, supervillains, and superheroes to STEM and connect them. So how did you come up with these amazing ideas? And, you know, why did you want to expand it and so on?
Right. Well, you know, we talk a lot about intersectionality, right? And this is a major influence for me, right? I've been a lifelong geek, spoiler alert, I know you're all shocked by this, and fangirl, right? The fan community. It's actually probably my first community. It was before my scientific community. So to me, it was just a no-brainer bringing these two amazing communities that I'm a part of, bringing them together. because that's part of who I am, right? And so try to be yourself, your full expression of who you are, right? And that's part of it. But on top of that, there's a lot more to it than that. First of all, we wouldn't have a lot of these popular arts that are showcased at Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, or Comic-Con International, without STEM, right? From, you know, the science and engineering and technology behind, you know, cinema, making movies, behind animation, behind cosplay, even engineering feats behind cosplay. So it's really cool to be able to bring that to people's attention. And I think too, it's just a natural setting for those of us who are high profile role models in the sciences, right? Because Comic-Con is all about superheroes, and we really are kind of superheroes of the modern age. When you think about science, I mean, what is science trying to do except make things better by gaining knowledge, right? So same thing with engineering and tech, right? Building things that improve the lives of humans, improve life on this planet. So I just think it's kind of a perfect fit, and it's really fun that I was able to be supported by If Then to bring you all there. I couldn't have done it without you, quite literally. So thank you for coming and helping me realize this crazy dream that I had.
I love that, because Kat and I talk about it all the time, where we're like, who would have known that there's so many of these careers that we did not know about that involves a level of STEM or understanding of STEM, and to actually, be successful in that career. And during Comic-Con, we came across more careers, right? Like more things. Even when it comes to making a movie that has some type of STEM element to it, who are they going to go to make sure it's realistic? Leaders in STEM, right? So that is, as her bird flies her head.
Well, no, I mean, I'm gonna jump in and say, I mean, that's part of the reason I started the podcast, is to highlight people in STEM, to highlight careers in STEM. And even with the podcast, I've met and learned about careers that I didn't know existed, and super excited to share that those are careers that our next generation can even go into or create their own careers. And so hearing about the If Then and learning about more and more programs like this is amazing to me. And then being able to share you guys' story, like that's my biggest thing. I like to sit back and learn about what's going on in the world and what women are doing in STEM and what new jobs are happening in STEM. So I absolutely love it. Now I'm going to go back and just be quiet and let Dr. Tay keep going.
No, that's good, because I think that's one of the things we always want to highlight. All of you have careers that I never really had a chance to really dive into. And even getting to know more and more of the ambassadors, I know all of them probably could say the same thing about someone else, right? So it's just amazing how many STEM careers are out here that you can't even imagine even exist. So I think that's amazing to bring these elements together and explore them more too. So I do have a few pictures that I wanted to put up. So I want to be able to have a great conversation amongst all of us. And, if you're photo shy, sorry, but you already gave us access to the photo. But I did want to show a few of these photos from Comic-Con and essentially from a few of the different events, so we can really dive in and talk about what was going on for all of us during several of those activities. So this is just a few of the ambassadors and a lot of the coalition partners I wanted to make sure I have up here. Specifically, I want to make sure I highlight Ecologic. Sam, if you wanted to speak on that. Yes, absolutely. So for those who don't know, I believe in also highlighting your initiatives, especially if they're STEM initiatives, because these are resources that a lot of the parents can be utilizing for their kids. So it's the beginning of the school year. You never know who's in need. We definitely want to utilize this platform to get that information out there. So Sam, talk to us about Ecologic.
Oh, my baby. Ecologic is my baby. Yeah. So Ecologic is actually the thing that inspires me the most. And that's saying something. If you know anything about me, you know that I have my hands in many pots. I wear many hats. I both do science and communicate science and educate about science with many different projects at Cabrillo National Monument. But when I first started working there about 5 years ago, I was asked to be an instructor for this free STEM summer camp for underserved girls that is run by Women in STEM for girls who are interested in STEM in our national park, doing the real park science that we do there. It's two full weeks, and I saw how life-changing this summer camp was for these girls. I knew out of everything that I do, that is my conservation legacy. Like, we are creating champions for nature and warriors for STEM, right? Out of this summer camp. So fast forward 5 years, and now I'm the executive director of the Ecologic Institute. It started as a park program, but I really wanted to expand it beyond the boundaries of our park, and I have, with some generous funding from a bunch of nonprofit organizations here in San Diego. So now we're doing free workshops around San Diego, free virtual workshops for those of y'all in other places, STEM workshops on the real science you do in the national parks. And we've got an after school or expanded learning program that's 2 to 4 weeks of amazing STEM curriculum that's chock full of STEM role models, including some of the women who are here today. We have more STEM summer camps. We did 2 this summer. And now my goal, I've got my eye on the prize. My goal is to expand this to national parks across the country to serve more underserved girls and to give them the opportunities to connect with their national parks and nature too. So that's Ecologic. And you can find us on Cabrio's website and with a list of all the free stuff and free resources that you can access from really anywhere in the world. So please look at
Yes, thank you so much. And I'm going to make sure we leave a portion at the end so everyone else can make sure you pub your resources and programs and initiatives that are available. So thank you for sharing that, Sam, because I think that was a big contribution to this. And we did get to meet some of the girls in your program as well during this, right? So the first thing that I wanted us to talk a little bit about is the pop-up STEAM fair. So this is what Bea was hinting to earlier about some of the activities, but please jump in, anyone, and share your actual activity and your table that you had. I guess I haven't heard from Corey yet, so we'll start with Corey.
Sure. Yeah, there I am dressed as Wonder Woman because we are the Justice League. We are the superheroes of STEM. So I ran a robotics table, little activity where the kids could decorate a skin for a robot. They could choose a STEM superhero, which were these cards that had some of our faces on them. And then they could operate a robot to go complete a mission. And they could program it either directly on the robot, or they had little pads where they could add in little programming commands. And within a matter of 5 minutes, sometimes quicker, if they didn't want to do the decorations, they could just go knock down a tower. Or there was a whole well, I had all sorts of complicated themes, but as you knew who had been there before, you couldn't get complicated it. You had to keep it simple and keep it sharp. So I learned since it was my first time, but we had a lot of fun.
I love it. And Sydney, I see you here on the bottom left. So I want to make sure you had a chance to tell us about your table.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun at my table. Last year I did bridge building, which a lot of kids enjoyed having the weights and making the bridges collapse mostly. So this time I said, okay, let's switch it and let's build towers, which I did not realize the increased level of difficulty. So I want to be grateful to all the parents that stood there for a very long time while their children honestly engineered how to build these towers. I love seeing the creativity. I love seeing what people do. And at a certain point, they start making those critical engineering like decisions. Okay, well, if I build up, I'm going to lose stability. But if I keep it here, I can actually make it a little more robust by adding a couple of popsicle sticks, some stickers. This year, the weights were clay. They started taking the clay apart. And I was like, wait. No, that's that's for the project. But anything and everything they could get their hands on. And I love the creativity. It's really awesome to see how each person, each human works through problems. And you learn a lot about the kids in this process. Some of them are very slow, methodical, very organized. Things stay in their place. Some, I mean, they're just stretching. I'm like, please don't hit anybody else's tower. You know, and you're like, okay, I'm actually learning so much about you, watching you work through this problem. Some are asking all the questions. Well, why should I do this? What about this? Why did they do this? Some are quiet. They'll listen to you. They'll go back down. They'll look up, listen, and they'll keep going. And so it's cool to see the personalities come out in such a fun, crafty, yet very STEM focused project.
I love that because it's so important to make sure we tap in as well as we can, because a lot of times the attention span for the kid is what, like 30 seconds. So if you don't catch them in that good little range, you're going to lose them forever. And to me, I thought it was amazing seeing the kids be in a Comic-Con museum and still be like, I'm interested and excited to talk to these women in STEM about STEM stuff. So we had to really be on it and make sure we caught their attention as much as we could. Becca, I see your table up at the top.
Well, first, I just want to say I was next door in the next table over to Sydney, and it was amazing to watch Sydney interact with these kids. She's talking about what she's learning from the kids, but part of what made Sydney's activity so successful was Sydney's presence there and her ability to break down the concepts and really explain it and be patient with them as they're doing some sort of wacky thing with a popsicle stick that's not going to work, but letting them have that experience of like having something not work and then how can we learn from it. It was so inspiring to have the table next to Sydney and see her in action.
Thank you so much.
My table, I'm an archaeologist, so I brought sort of an assortment of things for the kids to engage with depending on what their interests were. We had some little mini dig boxes with kinetic sand and some artifacts, reproduction artifacts buried inside for the kids to try to excavate out. And as Sydney was saying, some of them will just like reach in and grab the thing, like, I'm done. And others will carefully excavate, but that's okay. It's part of the conversation, right? Of why do we do things a certain way as scientists and why do we do other things? Then one of the other activities I had at my table were pictures of different kinds of phones from the early 20th century all the way up to the present. And the challenge for the kids and their adults often was to put those phones in order, just like we would do with artifacts when we find stone tools and then metal knives and then something, you know, as we see technology changing over time. And that was really fun to see those interactions with the kids and their grownups of, well, what is this thing? How do you dial this phone? Is that a phone? And just those kinds of conversations about, you know, it's still science. It's an archaeological process, but it's something that maybe people are more familiar with and they might see in their everyday life.
Absolutely.
And you also had adults in there. Look, I saw they were like, excuse me, like moving their child to the side to excavate. They're like, well, what is in here?
Right. I just want to know, if you had a picture of a rotary phone?
We did, yeah, a rotary phone, and the kind on the wall that you crank on the side of on the side of it, and oh yeah, yep.
Oh yeah. Wow. Okay. Tell them my age. Please continue.
And I know, Wendy, I know you had a table, but of course, Sam Snake stole the scene here. So I had to get this picture up completely to make sure it was in the know. But Wendy, tell us about your table that you had during this pop-up STEAM fair.
So I'm an earthquake geologist, so it was a sort of choose your own adventure earthquake situation. And people are scared of earthquakes sometimes. And so I try to go into it with something that we all love. So I went very pasta forward with this activity and used pasta to explain earthquake magnitude because it's logarithmic. And so I really like having activities. You know, I thought all of the activities were so good because people could touch them and feel them and think about them in different ways. And like Becca said with hers, pulling things in from their normal life, right? Like, these are phones I know, these are phones I don't know, but I can make some assumptions and I can bring this, you know, using all of my senses and my brain. So, you know, I wanted them to be able to touch and see the differences between the sizes of earthquakes. So if you imagine one strand of pasta is a magnitude 5, then 32 strands of pasta, like one serving size, would be a magnitude 6. But a magnitude 7 would be 1,024 strands of pasta, which is 3 1-pound boxes of pasta. So to see the pasta, you know, this much from one strand was kind of like, that's amazing. And then I had a few other things people could do. a little earthquake machine that simulates how faults work to show that we can't predict earthquakes. And then at the end, if as long as they answered a question, usually what do you do if you feel an earthquake, they would be able to choose a rock or a mineral. And then we talked about, how rocks are built, or minerals are the building blocks of rocks, and the rocks of the earth tell the story of our world once you learn how to read them. And that's what geology does, is it teaches you how to read the rocks. So it was fun to see how all of us were incorporating things from the world around us to try and get the kids interested in the concepts we were trying to teach, but in a really fun way. So it was inspiring. And I have a lot of ideas from, watching what my fellow ambassadors did and the way that they interacted. Like I really learned a lot just from that.
Well, Wendy, you totally touched on something there, right? Like where you have to meet people where they're at. And so when you're trying to explain the logarithmic scale to, a fifth grader, they're like, what are you talking about? But using pasta, something that everyone has had for dinner, right? And seen spaghetti strands, and then showing them the size of that and the magnitude of that is such a great way to really help them conceptualize what you're trying to get across, right?
Mm-hmm. Thanks. It's not as exciting as the snake, though. The snake stole every show.
Even I left my table for the snake. I was like, can someone watch my table? I'm just gonna.
Me too, Sydney. The other thing that I love about your activity, Wendy, and I know a lot of others had activities that did the same thing, is it incorporated not just one part of STEM, right? Like there was math in there as well as science. And a lot of times when I talk to the kids, they think that if as a scientist, all you do is science. There's no math involved. There's no tech. There's nothing, right? And unfortunately and fortunately, we can't just work with that one part of STEM. All advancement has to happen with these things blending together. But going back into touching and seeing and feeling, the snake that stole the show, I had to make mention, but not just the snake. Sam, you had a table that involved more touching and feeling and seeing and even smelling, I think, right? And I really love that. So talk to us about that, because it includes all the senses. And when we think about inclusivity, we have to, so I'm not even going to steal your show. You go ahead and tell us about it.
You're taking the words right out of my mouth. Exactly, right? When you do think about making things inclusive and accessible for people, you have to think about more than just seeing, right? Because there are some people who cannot or have vision impairment. And so I like to use a lot of the different 5 senses in any of the kind of outreach or activities I do. And this one that I was doing was highlighting amazing animal senses. So kind of the superpowers of animals and how animals sense the world differently than we do. So there were some examples of vision, right? So for instance, snakes can see in infrared, certain snakes can, pit vipers, or birds can see in UV, right? So we kind of showed what that might be like for them. But there was also talking about smell, for instance, and the activity I had was where we had them be ants. And so what's the primary sense of ants? It's actually their sense of smell, which they use their antenna on their head. They do not have nostrils, right, to smell. Specifically, they're really looking for the pheromones of their fellow ant species. This is how when you have one ant that comes into your house and toodles around, and then 10 minutes later, there's a whole trail of ants following the exact same pathway. It's because that first ant laid a pheromone scent for them to follow, right? The scout ant. And so I had a bunch of vials of scented oils, and I gave them a mystery scent and let them all smell it. And then they had to figure out of these unlabeled vials, which was the scent of their fellow ant. With the caveat that if they chose the wrong one, then they followed some other ant species home to their nest, which could be quite dangerous for them. But I had 2 stations. It was fun because sometimes they'd want to work together, right, and come to a conclusion together. And oftentimes, and you saw this a lot with siblings, they would want to go against each other. So whoever picked the right answer first, right, so they're smelling as fast as they can and trying to figure it out. But it was a lot of fun. And then, of course, to cap it all off, I had one of my 3 ambassador snakes. I do a snake talk every week. And part of the reason is just kind of to give people a positive experience with nature, especially I have a soft spot in my heart for those animals that are often vilified in popular media or culturally or whatever, right? People have these fears. And so I like to give people that positive experience and show them how amazing they are and just teach them to respect that wildlife, even if they don't particularly love it or are a little afraid of it, just know that they can respect it in its environment. So that was my activity.
Which
I love
I want to put an intentionality shout out for you, Sam, because as you talk about ability awareness, it is something that you are very keen on doing, not only at Comic-Con, but through your programs at Ecologic, and having different abilities and being able to help each other learn to work together. And I think in more ways than one, but in this way, this is one of the many reasons I think you're a great reflection of the If Then ambassadorship, because I think this was the first time that I had been around so many women that were so diverse in every single way that you could think of, and even ways that you didn't think of.
Right.
And you walk in the room and you're like, I feel like I belong. I have imposter syndrome, but I feel like I belong because it feels like everybody is different and it's not just me that's different. And so shout out to you for doing that, and shout out to If Then for cultivating that type of experience and being so intentional with their selection process.
Yeah, I love it. And I never mentioned, I guess I never talk about it, but I have a master's in animal biology, and I love animals and I love snakes, and I did my bachelor's. When I got my bachelor's degree, I did it on diamondback water snakes.
I'm so excited right now.
I would have been at your table, probably pushing kids out the way, like, excuse me, can I get closer to the snake? And then not wanting to give it back. So, yeah, I love it. I love everything. I'm really taking mental notes, and we'll probably listen to this again because I'm always trying to think of things I can do with my son to, just kind of encourage it. I don't want to push it on him. I don't want to be like, you got to go into STEM, but like hands-on things. So I definitely am going to, the first thing I'm going to do, I think I already have kinetic sand, is just probably bury his toys in some kinetic sand and see what it. So yes, I love it. Thank you all for.
Well, Kat, you have an open invitation if you want to come see me at Cabrillo National Monument. You can come backstage tour, come meet the snakes. I'd be happy to let you hold them for as long as you'd like.
I love it.
Okay, I will take you on that.
I love it. Better yet, because we don't want to wait too long, we might just have to bring all of you back for your individual interviews. Right, Kat?
Oh, yeah. Yes, please. Absolutely. I would love to definitely talk to all of you one-on-one if you're up to it. Awesome.
Perfect. And then Bea, last but definitely not least, talk to us about your table at the pop-up STEAM fair.
Yes. So what's funny is like when you talk about Python, all I can think about is code. So it's funny, right? Like, at least, Kate, you're with me. Okay, yes. So I'm like, yeah, whatever, just code. That's a Python I can relate to.
Snakes we want.
Exactly. So our table had three things. It had for little kids, the one that I was mentioning about the orange. Once you ground it, you can make different sounds. And so for the kids that were very interested, what we did is, hey, you can change the color, you can change the sound, you can change the pattern of the light. And some kids sticked enough so they can change it. So that was fun. This time, as far as I'm concerned, there was no orange juice. So that's a great sign. And so the kids are like, can I do this with lemons? Can I do this with bananas? And yes, that's the answer. So they love it. So they go to the parents and says, can we do some music or sounds with our fruits at home? And so then you have to explain the parents, this is not a fruit, this is how you get it, this is how you code. But that was fun. That was one thing. The other thing that we have was an EV3 Lego that you just can drive with a joystick. So that one is fun. It can be cost prohibitive because Lego things are very expensive. But at least the kids that when they get a chance to play around with it, and if they were very into it, they can play with the sensor and whatnot that was installed already on the robot for them to play with different programs. So that was the second activity. And the third activity that we have is actually coding with Python. So we have some code already in there, and then you explain the lines of code, and then say, okay, you made a square. Now, how would you make a triangle? How would you make a rectangle? How would you make a star? How would you make a honeycomb? And so that, especially if the kid already knows about the angles, then you can make the shapes, right? Like how many sides, what's the angle, the whole that. So every kid that it depends what you like, right? There's more the hands-on. There's other one that's a little bit more about into the computer, but it was overall like super fun.
Yeah, Bea, you were across from my table, and I was like, they're having so much fun over there.
And your table, Dr. Tay, also, I cannot tell you. I'll try to say, remember, Dr. Tay, Leticia, what you had was like those squishy brains that was so amazing. And I still have mine. So that was fun.
Yes, but the thing that I like to highlight about your table is, and even afterwards, so I know there was a day, you didn't do like the last day or something, and a lot of the people that had came before came to my table seeing whether or not you were coming back. And it was mostly people who are bilingual. And I was like,
yes,
that's I love, once again, that intentionality behind who was picked and diversity in the ambassadors who were there. You know, people had received something more than I could provide them from Bea's table, besides, you know, the fact that Python is a different language in itself. So I love that. I wanted to make sure I make mention of that when we speak of inclusivity, diversity, and so on. It's so many different elements to it. And I did make a mistake, so I couldn't see everybody. Kay, tell us about your table.
I was also right across from Bea and on the farthest side from Sam. So a little less animal, a little less snake vibe on my table, but still enough Python.
Yes.
So we had a workshop on data science. And data science, again, is involving computer coding, math and statistics, and a domain knowledge, something you're passionate about. For me, I worked at Spotify, so I love music data. So I had a giant board where we had to collect data, analyze data, and then make decisions. So we collected data on our favorite songs. And this is the nice part. It's a really quick exercise to get a lot of different people involved. But tell me about your favorite song. Let's see if we can find these attributes about it. Maybe the beats per minute, how danceable it is. Does it make you want to get up in the morning ready to go, or does it put you to bed? We'll gather a lot of different features about their favorite songs, and then we'll plot them out. So we have a 2D plot where we can see where all the different songs land. So we're talking about music, but actually plotting them out in like a 2D dot per song. Then we can see which ones might be similar, which ones might be different, and use our eyes to say, can I find patterns? Can I find things that are contrasting? What is my perfect playlist? And it really depends what you're trying to build. Maybe it is that morning workout, get ready for school, get ready for soccer practice. Or it's I'm trying to calm down after my last period of high school. I just want to take it some chill. We can find all the songs that are similar and make the best playlist that we could. But the cool part about data science is it's not just finding that data and analyzing it. It's making decisions. And then once we make those decisions, what I tell everybody is you got to tell somebody else about them. So what is your perfect playlist? Tell your friends, tell your business partners if you're in a work environment. It's a very, very collaborative field. So it's very exciting, very cool. And then the other really nice part, there were two really nice parts. Number one, data science, even if it's not your career field, it's the backbone. It's a little foundation to a lot of other career fields. So I said, music is my passion, but if it's not for you, maybe it's structural integrity, maybe it's ecology, maybe it's studying earthquakes. Every single one of these other booths, you can find data about and apply data science to. And then the other great part was, yes, being right across from Bea, we would finish a hands-on activity where you're really thinking about what code can do. And then walk 10 steps away and go actually practice with a code. In data science, we often use Python, hence the jokes about different kinds of snakes over here, just no live animals. But it was so great to be able to set that foundation and then say, this is just the beginning. Apply it to anything. And then what people have been saying a lot around here is, there's so many different career fields with science, so many different career fields with STEM. And I feel exactly the same way, especially about data science. You can apply it to anything. It's just what you're passionate about.
And you did a great job at your STEM talk, which we haven't talked about. There were STEM talks. You did an excellent job. Even a little dance. I saw a little dance move in there. You were telling us about the high energy songs and how they plot. So
if it's high energy, you gotta dance. And the other part of the whole reason I do this is just to get new song recs from, people cooler than me.
I love it.
So honestly, the worst part about the STEAM fair was not being able to participate in every single person's activity and see every STEM talk because we were too busy doing our own, right? But I wish I could have cloned myself. Okay, which one of y'all scientists and engineers is working on cloning? So can you please clone me so that one person can do the laundry while the other person goes out dancing with kids?
You know what I think was so interesting about what we're talking about that's sort of being highlighted for me right now is how creative all of the booths were. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes people feel like people that go into science or engineering are very objective and they're very like structured. And, I really love the idea that we are helping to dispel that because I know a lot of us have creative passions and pursuits and had past careers in something besides the science, maybe even the arts. I was an actress for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so, you can see that the people that do really great science and engineering are also really creative people. And so if you are a creative person, an artistic person, there's room for that in science. And, you don't have to be a scientist. What we were saying is that you can if you want to. Absolutely. There's room for you if you want to. And even if you're an artist, you can bring some science into that because these things are all together in the world. They're not just one or another thing.
Yeah, we had pottery and a typewriter.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At the STEM fair. And so.
And the comics, right? The comics and the trading cards and all of that illustration that takes the science from the lab or wherever and puts it in that very on theme for Comic-Con sort of medium. And for a lot of us, those things were drawn by one of our fellow ambassadors who's also a scientist, so she gets to combine both of her passions in research and science and in art and illustration and science communication. And I think there's the creativity aspect of being a scientist, I think is really important for people to understand that they can do both. You can have multiple passions.
Yeah, there was a
that create. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that the creativity that we all have makes us all artists. Mm-hmm. I believe that I'm an artist, and invention is my medium of choice.
I love that.
And I also wanted to say that it took a lot of a team effort, right? Like there's no way I could have done that myself, especially 3 workshops. So in the case of us, we were super happy that Sam was allowed to find some tickets for the rest of the team at Nuevo, right? And that way they get to see multiple people. I even want someone that's local to San Diego. So that was very fun to do the activity because definitely I could have not done 3 things on my own.
Same here. I had my sister come, so she helped me out as like my assistant for the day, but my sister's in cybersecurity, so she was also talking to people about that element, right? So it was great having all of these experiences and being able to highlight our careers and give something that inspired the kids to look into it a little further. And I know a lot of us also had I know we talked about it slightly, but our splash talks. Sam, can you tell us, did you come up with the splash talk idea? Because first of all, can we say how amazing it is to make sure we can get it in, 1 to 3 minutes?
It was 3 to 10.
Okay.
Not 1 to 3. Sorry. There are those talks where you have the slide advances automatically every 10 to 20 seconds. I've never done one of those.
That would give me anxiety.
Just thinking about it. But boy, would it be streamlined and perfect. I'm sure you practice it a lot. Anyways, and just as a way to engage people more. I mean, they see a little bit at our tables, but what they're seeing and doing it as a hands-on activity, it's a totally different medium, right? To kind of explain what you do. So just another facet of them getting to know us and see us as scientists, and then having a Q&A session with us as well. Instead of when you're at your table, you're being mobbed by 10 people. It's hard for people to have that one-on-one interaction. It's a little bit easier when after your talk and they can raise their hand and they can ask questions, I think, in that aspect.
Absolutely, because I really feel like we gave people like at least a 3-in-1 combo, right? Because we gave them the pop-up STEAM fair, the splash talks, and then the last thing I definitely want us to talk about would be our panel talks, right? And I'm going to take this off so everybody can see us while we talk, but I just wanted to highlight some of the amazing pictures. So obviously we were excited to be there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me add that back.
I can't see everyone when it's up here, so I'm going to take this off very soon. But we were very excited to be in a place and meshing together our STEAM or STEM, careers and journeys with, supervillains, superheroes, the storylines to these great comics and shows and so on, but also dressing up as those heroes and villains and really integrating and making sure people understood, the premise behind why we're here, whether it's through representation or anything else. I'm going to give Sam the mic again to kind of just highlight some of those panel topics that were discussed during the Comic-Con or the convention.
Yeah, so I really to our partner, some of our partner organizations.
That was my fault. Can you start over?
No worries.
I closed you out for a second.
No problem. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes,
awesome.
Absolutely.
I want to give a shout out to our partner organization. So we had some coalition partners that you saw at the beginning, some of the logos up there. So the Fleet Science Center, that is the Science Museum here in San Diego, and our wonderful partners at Cosplay for Science. It's a group of scientists that cosplay to make science more appealing and accessible to different variety of people. And then the wonderful folks at Star Warsologies, which looks at the Star Wars universe through the lens of real science. We all kind of banded together and became this little coalition called the Steam Pop Network, where we decided we would apply for these panels at Comic-Con together. And so we got together and ideated what are some of the properties that are the most popular that we can speak to, and that we think we could pull some amazing scientists and engineers and technologists to be on these panels. So we brainstormed a bunch, and the ones that were selected were Fear and Fungi, the Science of the Last of Us, Ms. Marvel and the Power of Representation. I forget what the Science of Superheroes ended up being called. Can one of y'all tell me?
STEM powers? Was that it?
She changed the name at the last minute, and so I can't remember.
The Science of Superheroes.
Like a Science of superpowers or superheroes. And then there was the best title of them all, Indiana Jones and the Nexus. I'm gonna botch this, but it makes me laugh every time. And the Nexus of Becca, can you help me out?
Something about punching fascists.
Yeah. Okay, you gave away the punchline, but
I can't remember where it is, but it's something to do with punching fascists.
Archaeology and punching fascists.
Yeah.
And then we also had Dr. Evil or scientists as villains.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing. So really diverse panels, diverse topics, and every single one of those rooms was not only packed with 0 empty seats, but quite literally a line out the door, and in some places out the door and around the block. I mean, the line just kept going, which was incredible. And wonderful audience questions and engagement. So I just was so proud of you all listening to these panels. You just knocked it out of the park.
It was amazing. So let's talk about these panels, like some of the questions you had, some of the topics. Anybody can go first. I feel like nobody's.
Well, can I tell you my favorite question of all time?
Mm-hmm.
So I was on the Dr. Evil Scientists as Supervillains, and the audience, and someone from the audience asked, what was our supervillain origin story?
I remember.
And it was such a good question. And I was so excited because mine came to me in a flash. Because I do work with robotic exoskeletons. So you literally wear an exoskeleton that gives you physical capabilities. It's meant for people with strokes or multiple sclerosis. But in my origin story, it takes me over. So it's like literally like the pieces of the robot start like sticking into me, and they turn me into this robot super villain. So I loved it. I loved it.
Okay, so that was the right panel for
Wow.
you.
Right. So you were like Iron Woman talking about, but I get that exoskeleton.
Yeah.
I love it.
I love that.
I was on the Indiana Jones panel, and at one point we sort of paused and asked the audience how many people in the audience were archaeologists or knew archaeologists, like in real life. And one person raised their hand out of this whole packed room, which really, to me, just brought home the importance of what we're doing. Because for so many people, their only experience with archaeology is Indiana Jones.
Right.
Nothing wrong with Indy. It's fun adventure stories, but it's not archaeology. And to be able to be there with the other people on the panel and sort of representing this field and being those actual scientists in front of this audience who do this stuff for a living, that it just really struck me that, you know, how important it is that we have that kind of representation at events like Comic-Con to give people an opportunity to interact with the kinds of science they might see on the screen. So kudos to Sam and the rest of the coalition for the panels that you put together this year. It was fantastic.
Yes, I remember when they were just being advertised to us after I had already been placed on a panel, and I was like, but I want to be a part of this one, and that one too. So definitely great topics that were covered, and it allowed for arrangement of like exploration of our careers, but also just that creativity once again in sparking some of that, what our careers can tell you, what we can tell you about our careers through the actual Comic-Con theme, right? Anybody else?
Yeah, so Kay, Sydney, and I were on the same one for Power of Representation and Miss Marvelous. And to me, what really struck me was that there were teachers in the audience. So now we're talking to 3 teachers, 2 in California and 1 in, I want to say, Portland. And so that this follow up, right? It's like, okay, you all talk about science. How do I bring science to my school? And so I think that was amazing, at least for us, right? If any of you want to connect with the same teachers that we talked to, more than happy to share those. But to me, it's like, so not only are they paying attention, but there's teachers looking for how to help their students, even though it has had nothing to do with the school year, it's their own budget, doing that. That's when you see like, oh man, you know, like these teachers are the future of these kids. Like it was just amazing. So we'll be doing coding workshops, hopefully this December during Computer Science Education Week with those. So yeah.
Amazing. And on that panel too, like the diversity in media portion is exactly what we're doing with the If Then ambassadorship, bringing the next generation of women in STEM along this journey with us. So it was really interesting to see the parallels about what we have been doing with the If Then ambassadors and what you see in Comic-Con, and taking it a step farther. Almost every industry needs leaders like this. So even if you're not in an organized position, maybe like we are, it's so important to figure out how to be that leader, how to encourage people to step up with you, how to bring these folks along your journey too. So it was really, really important to not just get our word out there, but also see how other people react and give advice on what people can do too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like with our panel specifically, sorry, with our panel specifically, that importance of diversity, I mean, the power of representation, Miss Marvel, it was interesting because when I watched Miss Marvel for the first time, I learned so much. I was saying how it was like sitting in somebody's living room, but like there was a big gap between the people that I knew and like what their family could be like, or elements of culture that are either very similar to my own or very, very different, or even how there's traumas that were there that their families are still navigating through, the partition that happened. And you know, that's not something that I think of, but it's something that is a common conversation in the household. And listening to how people related to that, whether it was through your own lens or through theirs, was really cool. Having scientists talk about it from very different perspectives, I think it was amazing, and I was so glad to be a part of it.
I love it. And I feel like everyone had fun in all these. So I do want to make sure I read off some of the numbers for these rooms. I did pull up our spreadsheet. Hope you don't mind. But, I did a tally like a week ago or whenever this came out. And I said, to the least, we have interacted with at least 2,500 individuals, whether it was through the panel discussions, the pop-up STEAM fairs, the splash talks. And I know it's not all captured because we shared our social media with videos and pictures with captions that also describe what we were doing. So the 2,500 does not capture everyone, right? Like I said, to the least, which means, on the minimum side, that's how many people we've interacted with and we're able to hopefully spur some type of enthusiasm for STEM through those individuals through just that weekend alone. So I think that is amazing in itself. So kudos once again to Sam and everyone who was involved in this. One thing I do want to highlight for the Science is Superpower, because I don't think there's anyone here from that except for me. Except for myself. So one thing that I like, my favorite part was I did a quick experiment and with all the adults in the room and had them, because we were talking about Jean Grey and we were talking about neuronal spiking. And I made sure we made a mention of like how fast you want your neurons to, transport and to spike and send messages. And I had them do a quick test where they were literally trying to see how many times they clapped in 1 second. Versus how many times your neurons are firing in 1 second. And would you want to work at the efficiency of how many times you can clap in 1 second versus allow your brain to do what it needs to do at its healthiest state? And it brought it back around to you need to sleep, you need healthier activities to make sure we keep that balance, right? And I really loved it. Everybody was receptive. They stood up, they did the clapping, everything. And I was so amazed that they were fully participating in this activity that I literally pulled out of nowhere during this pop-up STEAM fair. So I think it was amazing arrangements of events across the board. So I know we're coming to time, and I want to make sure that we end by letting you all have a chance to tell us how we can stay in contact with you and any initiatives that you have. And I know, Sam, we started with your Ecologic. If you have any more to throw out, and can you remind us of how to get in touch with Ecologic once again before we leave?
It sounds great, and I'll be brief because I've talked a lot today and I want to hear from everybody else. You can look me up on Cabrillo National Monument's official website. That's nps.gov, as in National Park Service.government, backslash CABR.
I love it.
You know what I'm saying? CABR, CABR. Okay, and just look for Ecologic on that site. You can also follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn. Instagram's at SteamBossSammy, and that's Sammy with 2 M's and an IE. CaT, I'm already following you. I started following you the other day. Yeah. And then you can find me just and look for Samantha Wins on LinkedIn, and I pop up right away.
Thank you. Dr. Bohan.
You can find me all over the internet. I am Dr. Wendy Rocks on everything, including the website. That's the name of my company. Except on TikTok, I'm Dr. Wendy Rocks It. So somebody has taken my name. And it should be easy to remember, right? Because I rock. And also I'm a geologist. Okay, I'm done. After that bad joke, I'm done.
I honestly thought that Wendy's last name was Rocks. And so then I realized it wasn't. So.
It would be.
Yeah, you also thought I was Gina Davis. So
that's true. I know. I'm not the best one. I'm sorry.
That is the best.
That is too funny. Becca.
I'm on most of the social medias at Becca Peixoto, just my name. I think my Instagram is b.fish.bones. But anyway, I have a comic book about some archaeology that was drawn by an ambassador. You can find it on my blog. You can find a link to it. The blog is Swampscapes, WordPress.swampscapes.com. And there's a link there. It's about some archaeology in the Great Dismal Swamp in Virginia. It's super cool site. I think everybody should read the comic book and learn more about it. And yeah, that's me.
I love it. Kay.
Amazing. I am on the socials as K_the_savage, my last name. So please find me there. And with the If Then Ambassadorship, I've been partnering a lot with formerly known as Napris, but is now Pathful Connect. to do online teaching to schools across the US around data science workshops or career days.
Perfect. Corey. Oh, we can't hear you, Corey.
Muted.
Sorry. Woo.
We good now.
LinkedIn and Instagram are probably the best. Corey Lathan, Dr. Corey L. My book, Inventing the Future, Stories from a Techno-Optimist. Have to put a plug for that. You can find that lots of places. And then 2 nonprofits that I'm on the board of that are part of my passion for reaching out to everyone in STEM of all ages. The Kid Museum, which is the largest dedicated makerspace in the US in Bethesda, Maryland, and the REC Foundation, which is the Robotics Education and Competition Foundation, which has robotics for all ages.
I love it. Sydney.
Awesome. So I changed my name. So at CSITSOR, because it's a mouthful, because I love alliteration. So at CSITSOR, pretty much on every platform. Also, I'm going to I co-authored a book and it recently got released. It's called Extraordinary Engineers, and it's about women in engineering. I know everyone's shocked because I probably have not done a great job sharing, but hooray. And I wrote the chapter about myself, so that was exciting. And yeah, so I'm on Amazon. And yeah, always love to do outreach, speaking at schools and all those things. Yes, and that's all for me.
Love it. Bea, and congratulations. Bea.
Yeah, so everywhere at Bea Gandica, all of the social media, and then anything that if you're hearing this and you want to learn how to code, nuevofoundation.org, or the coding workshop, more than 35 coding workshops, completely free for you to follow up, especially for kids first grade to high school.
I love it. Well, I am impressed. I am excited. Thank you all so much for being here. I thought that we would run over a lot more than this, considering we have exponentially increased the amount of guests on at one time. So I definitely appreciate you all taking your time out of your night to be with us and to share your gifts and how we're continuing to work together to uplift and inspire the next generation when talking about our STEM journeys and so on. Kat, I'm going to throw it to you to end it off.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to echo the words with Dr. Tay. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for everyone who joined us virtually online. I saw Deshaun and Alon, but I couldn't say anything because we were really in a flow. But thank you for joining. Also, if you're listening to this podcast later, make sure you check out the videos. And so you can see the pictures and things like that we were talking about. Ladies, if you would like to be on the show one by one, please let Dr. Tay know. I would love to get more in depth on the work you all are doing. And lastly, I just want to say that this podcast is on all platforms. Also got to plug myself in the new kid books that I wrote. They're all based on my son, Carter Canby. We got seismology, we got marine biology, astrophysics, and animal biology. So these are the 4 I started with. I want to see how these do. If they do great, then I have other women I can talk to about other careers to write. So yes. And I want to say again, thank you. We went over a little bit, but I really, really appreciate all of you. And yeah, we give you back your Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.